All right, welcome back. Many people had some pretty strong opinions on some of my recent videos, and so they wanted to tell me just how I was wrong. So let's get into it. Okay, so the majority of today's mailbag is from the As Within, So Without video, which had some political overtones of an economic nature. Now, I don't particularly like to delve into the political because of its highly polarizing nature. And there's even a lesson in the Laws of Riches series. Don't polarize your customers. Don't polarize your audience, because you can lose many of them. They can and will turn against you. You can give them a mountain of truth and help, but you make one polarizing comment about their religion, their politics, or heck, even a band that they like, and they could turn against you in an instant. That is the power of polarity. It's a magnetic force. It gets people to move, just as it got many of you to move by commenting. See, that's how I know that you're polarized. It put you into action. You couldn't help but to comment. The polarity was in control of you. And the video in question barely got political. It's economics. It just scratched the surface, and it polarized people enough to let me know about it. So I already knew going into it that I was going to get some comments over it. But it's very difficult to teach about polarity and to make you aware of these things without triggering your polarity at some point. That's why in the very first lesson on this channel, I said don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, and made you aware of polarity even then, so that you would give a new way of looking at things a chance. I mean, even the people who commented saying that they agreed with me are polarized. They were compelled to move to write to me telling me that they agreed with me. It's just that their polarity was in harmony with what I had to say. Only Frater can explain polarity as a science while expressing a bias. As much as I've taught depolarization, you cannot get away from polarity entirely. I've explained many times, and even within that video, that if there's no polarity, there's no movement. No movement, no life. So polarity is necessary. It's not a bad thing. The entire point of depolarization is to just make you aware of it, so that you're not easily moved and manipulated by others, because the system takes advantage of it. They manipulate your polarity. If you weren't polarized, the media could not influence you the way that they do. And you are absolutely powerless to do anything about it until you're aware of your own polarity and your buttons that they push to use you for their own purposes. Now, if you want to call my aversion to a system that's killed over 100 million people worldwide, doesn't allow you to own private property, and controls every aspect of your lives under threat of imprisonment or death, a bias, then okay, you got me. I do have a bias against communism and pretty much anything that's bad for people. I am not neutral towards it. Now, I've made it abundantly clear where I stand on everything before. I lean a bit more right when it comes to economics, and I lean a bit more left when it comes to social issues, excluding the SJW activism stuff. You can call me a centrist if you like. A radical centrist. Now, I can't tell if this person is being facetious or not. That never really translates very well over text online. But because radical and centrist are the exact polar opposite of one another, this person is either a genius or an idiot. So because it's my audience, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, well played. So is Frater pro-capitalism? Again, I can't tell if they're being sarcastic. So I'm just going to give you the benefit of the doubt and answer, yes, I am. And I'll tell you why. Because I know that anyone who wants to be wealthy can be wealthy. Now, everyone would like to be wealthy, but not everyone really wants to be wealthy badly enough to get up and go out and do something about it and get it. And capitalism is the only system where they allow the citizens to become wealthy. That alone makes it the greatest system. When people around the world want freedom and prosperity, they do not head for communist countries. No, they head for the U.S. and capitalism. There's a reason right now that the Cuban protesters are holding up the American flag. They've been living under communism and poverty. I think people should be able to innovate and create freely and be rewarded for their creations, instead of being just told what to do all the time. So yeah, I'm pro-capitalism all the way. Frater, I wish you would slow the speed you talk down. Your old vids are hypnotic with your slow, deep voice. This new speed is very hard to follow. Much respect, much gratitude. Is that better? Now, I'm the one being facetious, right? But I get what you're saying. I've been going back and reworking a lot of the older videos, and so I know what you're talking about. The tonality of my voice changed due to the sinus surgery, and I believe the speed is just a reflection of the pace of my life at the moment. Back then, I had a lot more time and a lot less responsibility, and that resulted in me being a lot more laid back. Today, my schedule's pretty tight, so I'm trying to get things done quicker, and maybe that has the effect of me talking faster. The other thing is I didn't put a lot into the editing back then. Now things are edited so that they keep moving, so that there's not a lot of long brain fart pauses in between things that I'm saying. And when I say I edit, I mean I edit. I'm going to take a screenshot of just the audio up until this point in this video to show you just how many cuts have been made. I am not a great orator by any means. Perhaps I should start leaving in some of my mistakes, like towards the end of the video or something, just to show people how not great of a speaker I really am. But back to your original comment, I could maybe go for some slow and low on something here in the future. However, I don't want to put people to sleep either. Some people have actually told me that they would listen to my voice to help put them to sleep. I do have a hypnosis course on the back burner. It had been in development, but then was put on the back burner when the program I was using to develop it stopped working with Windows 10, and they never fixed it. At some point, it will be revisited and completed, and that would certainly include the softer side of my voice. That's funny. I always thought that they could just print money whenever they wanted. Everyone can. Well, technically they can and do, but not without consequences. This is again in response to the As Within, So Without video, where I was talking about the guy believing that the government can just print money and just create infinite money, and then everybody can have a bunch of money, and then we can all be wealthy. Well, the problem with that is that when you create more money, it causes inflation. But if the term inflation confuses people, think of it as dilution, like you're watering something down. Money isn't immune to the law of supply and demand. The more you have of something, the less it's worth. Something that is common is worth less than something that's rare. And so when you have an oversupply of money in circulation, it dilutes down the value of the money as a whole. Now, if the currency was able to retain its value when they did that, then that would be one thing, but it doesn't, especially after they removed the dollar from the gold standard in 1971. So the dollar isn't directly tied to anything else of value. Now, one of the reasons the U.S. is able to manipulate the dollar while staving off a lot of the consequences of that is because the dollar is the world's reserve currency for oil. All oil must be traded in dollars, and that gives the dollar a lot of advantages. But if we ever lose that status, look out. Taxing the rich means helping them. Money that would otherwise be wasted on luxury is being put to work in research. This in turn increases the standard of living and helps the rich. Too bad they won't let us help them even more. What research? And who are you to say that the money's being wasted? Maybe that money is used to research new innovation and products that would benefit society as a whole. See, the biggest problem with socialists is that they think that they're entitled to everyone else's money, including yours. In fact, they don't make any distinction between their money and your money. See, to the socialist, you don't know how to best spend your own money. They do. So they want to spend it for you so that you make the right decisions. It's just another form of authoritarianism. Economic authoritarianism. It doesn't matter if they didn't earn the money themselves. They still want to make the decisions for you. This entire comment is basically this person saying they know what's best for the rich, or how the rich should best use their money. When it comes to their own money, however, they'll start singing a different tune. And this is a big reason why socialism leads to communism. Because if you don't believe that somebody's even entitled to the money that they earn, then why should they be entitled to any private property either? Frater X, you give people a lot of airtime who don't deserve it. Well, perhaps. But understand that part of the disagreement that I have with these individuals is letting them know that even while they're arguing with me, I'm still being productive and will earn money from it, as opposed to them just wasting time. Putting this disagreement into a video lesson is my following through on that. I will be earning ad revenue from disagreeing with this individual. Now, if there wasn't a lesson in it, I wouldn't do it, but there usually is. I think that the person you were talking to couldn't articulate what he was trying to get across, which is that these multi-billion-dollar conglomerates and CEOs find loopholes into paying less tax than the middle class does. The middle class pays for the people on the bottom, and they pay for the people on the top. Okay, so this is a big talking point for socialists who say that the rich don't pay their fair share, that they're always finding loopholes. And it's really not the case. Unless they're hiding their money offshore somewhere, which some of them probably do, there really aren't any loopholes. If there were, I wouldn't have paid almost $50,000 in federal taxes last year. I'd rather not purchase a new vehicle for the government each year. I'd have found me a loophole. The reality is that the tax law is set up for incentives. And these tax incentives are given out to, quote-unquote, the rich for performing certain actions, namely providing housing and or providing jobs, both of which are needed in an expanding society. So when the rich provide these things, they get tax breaks in exchange. Now, I don't provide housing, and I'm the only employee of my company, so I'm not providing any jobs, so I don't get these tax break incentives. The incentives are motivation for the rich to provide these things. Now, if you feel that they shouldn't get these tax breaks, then you should probably keep your dick in your pants and stop reproducing. More housing and more jobs are only needed because people keep pumping out kid after kid after kid in an already overpopulated society. When you make more people, you need more things. And if you need more things, then you need people to create more things. And people need incentives and motivation. You have to make it worth their while. Now, even with these incentives, the rich still pay the majority of taxes. There may be some hiding their money in the Cayman Islands, but even so, the majority of the taxes collected are still coming from the top earners. The rich not paying their fair share is a myth, the sole purpose of which is to polarize you into an economic class. It's a fact that if they can polarize you against the rich, you'll never be able to be rich yourself. It's also interesting how socialists will use the example for the evils of capitalism as the multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates and CEOs, when that is just a tiny fraction of the quote-unquote rich. The vast majority of people who are well off are just small business owners like yours truly, and overwhelmingly so. So they want to upend the entire system for just a handful of businesses. You won't hear Bernie Sanders or other socialists rallying against the mom and pop shops for their examples because they aren't polarizing enough. Yet many of them are going to earn 6-7 figures and will be most definitely affected by their policies and tax increases. I do think that rich people need to be paying their share of taxes. They get away with paying far too little. Now, are you speaking from experience, or is that just a talking point that you've picked up from media, that the rich don't pay their fair share? Because I've been both poor and well off. And I can tell you right now that I pay a hell of a lot more taxes being well off than I ever did being poor. So I am uniquely qualified to speak for both the poor and the rich, because I have been both with and without money. So when people say that the rich don't pay their fair share, I like to show them my tax bill, at which point they usually realize that they don't know what they're talking about. Also, most people on the streets have mental illness. I have been on the streets, so I know this firsthand. Okay, so on this, you are coming from a place of experience. I know many of you will say, no, they are just drug addicts. Most people who are on drugs are self-medicating a severe mental illness. Our brains do not function the way normal people do. It is very hard to be stable when you're dealing with brain dysregulation, I hear so many people talking about homeless people should just get a job. If the solution were that simple, none of us would be homeless. Do you actually think we want to live the way we do? It sickens me, to be honest, how little compassion there is in this world for people who are struggling. No, this is actually a very huge problem in this country. Mental illness on the streets is a very real issue, and it's one that I've acknowledged for a very long time. The reason this is such a big problem is that most of the mental institutions and asylums have been defunded. They even made fun of it on an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Hang on, what is going on here? Looks like this place has been shut down for months.
Oh my God, Dennis, listen to this. Reed Mental Institution was shut down because of statewide cutbacks. Oh, so they just cut all the loonies loose?
What? How could they do that? That's insane.
I guess it was either that or raise our taxes.
What? Raise my taxes? Come on, how much do these vultures need? I already pay a ton in taxes.
Well, then I guess they're gonna have to shut down more of these places.
What? Shut down more of these? We gotta have somewhere to send our lunatics.
Well, then we're going to have to pay more in taxes.
What? I'm not paying more in taxes, Dee. I won't do it. Don't speak of it again.
Just as people today are calling for defunding the police, the same type of thing went on many decades ago with the mental institutions and asylums when they were all portrayed as abusing their patients. And just like the police, there were some who did, which made all of them look bad. And so instead of getting the critical care that they need in these institutions, they end up on the street instead with no place else to go. And the ones who are fortunate enough to actually see somebody for their illness is typically just given a prescription and then trusted to take their meds, which many of them just don't because they're mentally ill. Now, these institutions are typically funded through the state level, not federal. So the problem severity is going to vary from state to state. But I've long been a proponent of funding mental institutions and asylums again, and wouldn't mind a tax increase specifically for that purpose, without them trying to shoehorn a bunch of pork in there, so that the people with mental issues can get the help they need instead of living on the streets, possibly posing a danger to themselves or others. But also understand that there's a difference between taxation and compassion. Being forced to give money through taxation isn't compassion. There is another support system available to you that is based upon compassion, and that is called charity. Charitable donations make up a large part of the support for the homeless. Until the mental institutions are fully funded once again, researching and supporting the local charities in your area is still the best way to go to have the most impact. Too many people mislabel things as socialism and communism that aren't either. Social services within a largely capitalist system are supposed to be paid into it by everyone for use by anyone who needs it. It's not someone else's money if we all pay into it, and if politicians and bureaucrats don't misuse appropriations for the parts of the system to which they were intended. Likewise, loopholes need to be closed for the mega wealthy and mega corporations. It wouldn't dig into their bottom line all that much, but it would fund programs for those who need them. Okay, can you see how this comment contradicted itself? On one hand, he says, well, it's not someone else's money if we all pay into it. And within the same paragraph, he singles out the mega rich and the mega corporations. You know, the 1%, they need to pay more because they can afford it. See, even then they think it's not somebody else's money, but yet they know how best to spend that money. Now, first of all, nobody would pay into it at all if it weren't for tax laws. Nobody's just willingly going to give up a big percentage of their income without some sort of penalty or threat for not doing so. And second, good luck on the politicians not misusing the funds. Why do you think they're always wanting more? It's not because their hearts are so big. It's because their wallets are getting bigger. I mean, hell, even Bernie Sanders, he used to rail on the millionaires and the billionaires. Well, now he only rails on the billionaires because he himself became a millionaire. So he tends to leave them out of it. So this is a great example of what I said earlier, how socialists cannot tell the difference between their money and other people's money. To them, it's indistinguishable because, we all pay into it. So it's everybody's money. And because it's everybody's money, that means it's my money. And so now I get to tell you what to do with your money. Or our money. Funny how the ones who want to dictate what to do with the money are the ones who paid into it the least. And we've already gone over how loopholes aren't a real thing. There's just tax laws. Now, those tax laws are pretty complicated. They keep adding to them over and over. I've always been a proponent of having a flat tax, a very simplified percentage. Now, to me, that's fair across the board and very easy to calculate and get rid of those loopholes that you guys are so worried about. Bill Burr and Filthy Frank in one video, be careful with that edge, Frater. I understand where you're coming from, but you also seem pretty comfortable with the power structures that are in place. Well, I am a Capricorn, and Capricorn rules over structure. We enjoy stability. Unfortunately, it took me decades to learn that when you work with the system instead of fighting against it, you have a much easier time and are a lot more successful. Not that I really care personally. Well, you do, because you commented on it. So you have to care somewhat. I think it's your polarity kicking in. But we are in the age of Aquarius, and a lot of the corruption that does happen within government, business, and finance are going to be shaken up and exposed whether we like it or not. Sure, I wouldn't disagree with that. There's always going to be change, but that doesn't mean that all the change is necessarily going to be for the good. Just ask Venezuela. The majority is not criticizing Bezos for his success. They are criticizing him for things like overworking his employees, poor customer service, and not wanting a pandemic to end because he doesn't want to take a loss after the billions he already made low. No, they're criticizing him out of envy. You're talking about the majority, which is the masses. And they're really criticizing him for being rich. That's just what it comes down to. Everything that you just brought up are just business issues. If the employees have a problem with the hours, they can quit, or perhaps form a union. Poor customer service is between the company and the customer. Not wanting the pandemic to end is subjective. That's just an opinion. I don't think Bezos has ever come out and said, I do not want it to end. You may correct me if I'm wrong on that and point me to the article where he said that. That kind of reckless greed and arrogance is not sustainable. It has caused way too much destruction on this planet, and one way or another balance is going to be restored. Okay, so at this point you've already cast judgment. You've judged him as being greedy and arrogant, without any real evidence of either, and that's fine if that's your opinion. And that may be your opinion of all rich people. But the reality is a much different story. It's like when I asked the guy how Bezos has stolen from him personally and he couldn't give me an example. And it's the same thing here. It just goes back to, oh, rich people are greedy and evil. And that's just not the case. Of course, I don't know him personally. Maybe he is greedy and evil. But overwhelmingly, when it comes to rich people, it's not true. I do know that if it wasn't for Jeff Bezos, who I'm not a fan of, by the way, it's not like I'm a Bezos fanboy. But without him, I wouldn't be able to find half the things I need to order. A lot of times I'll look for things in the stores and I just can't find them anymore. So I got to go online and find them. We are all a family on this planet. All of us are connected. If you aren't willing to make a plate for that bum at your table when you have 3 McMansions, a private jet, a yacht, and 2 side pieces that you pay $10,000 a night for a good time, you're out of balance. Why? I mean, the thing about the bums is that they reek and they often piss themselves. That might put people off their appetite at the table. Now, all kidding aside, you're talking about entitlement. You're saying that the bum is entitled at the rich man's table, even though the rich man doesn't know him, and he could be one of those mentally ill people that we talked about earlier. Somebody who just likes to attack people randomly with a machete. That tends to happen. Look, if you help one, you have to help them all. You aren't supposed to have a favorite bum. Now, I'm being facetious again. And again, it comes down to you knowing how best to spend Bezos' money. You know, for the greater good, for the greater morality. Funny how it always comes back down to casting judgment. And it's not like Bezos has an obligation or responsibility to these people. You're talking about him being responsible for an entire group of people. Why not make him responsible for the entire planet? He could just pay for everybody. That's probably not a bad idea to some of your socialists. After all, it's not coming out of your pocket. Yes, personal responsibility and accountability are key, but I find it interesting how you want to focus more on the bum than the billionaire when it comes to that. Because it's the difference between someone who takes action and gets things done and someone who doesn't take action and gets nothing done. You know, that responsibility key. Who really has more power and sway over our lives with the current circumstances? Bezos or the bum? The bum only has himself to be responsible for. Yeah, but he don't do it. That's why he's a bum. Has no worldly authority or capital. Not if the communists have anything to say about it. With great power comes great responsibility. If you wield your power recklessly, then you should take responsibility for that and be able to ground yourself enough to see it. Well, it's not like I don't see your point of view. Bezos should have more influence over your life than the bum. You should be thankful for that. That's not a bad thing. Unfortunately, Bezos, as many others like him, have skirted and straight up deflected the consequences for far too long. How do you figure? Consequences of what? Free 2-day shipping with your Prime account? I think you're placing way too much blame for what's wrong in the world on one man. Or one type of man, ultra-successful men. That's not going to hold much longer and explains why you're seeing an increase in hostility from people who are calling it out. No, you're seeing an increase in hostility towards it because the media keeps pumping them up and filling their mind full of myths that aren't true. They are using your polarity for their purpose. They know that you have a resentment towards the ultra-rich, so they feed you a line that the rich aren't paying their share, that they're greedy, that they're evil, knowing that these beliefs are going to keep you from your own prosperity while using you for their political agenda. At any rate, I respect you, Frater, even if we disagree. Your videos have helped me a lot over the years, so hopefully this doesn't come across as an attack because it's nothing of the sort. Just a little food for thought from one of your witchy subs. Peace. And I appreciate that. I didn't take it as an attack, and I hope that my response isn't taken as one either. I very much appreciate the polarized comment. Thank you. Okay, so this one's on the Tom McDonald video. It says, this is beyond satanic. And your comment is beyond ignorant. I mean, what's satanic? Are you saying Tom McDonald's satanic? Are you saying his songs are satanic? Are you saying my video's satanic? I don't know what you're referring to. If you're going to leave a comment like this, then at least let me know what you're talking about. Because if you don't know, I don't know. I considered servitors, but I didn't want them in the bedroom watching me sleep like a dog at the foot of the bed. Do you not trust your dog? I mean, I guess if you don't like your pets in there watching you, then you wouldn't want a servitor, but like if you have pets, you didn't even create them. You create the servitor. I mean, you either trust your creation or you do not, I guess is what I'm getting at. And for the record, you don't have to keep them in your bedroom. You can even keep that room off limits to them if you wish. You set the parameters. And it's also going to depend on what the purpose of the servitor is. What is its function? But if you're not weirded out by a pet in your house, then you probably shouldn't be worried about a servitor. Thought Forms and Servitors is the program that's going to bring you from having to do magic all the time for your results to putting your magic on autopilot for constant success. When you master this program, it's like having your own little army of helpers to do things for you, and fully programmable to do your bidding. We're going to talk about the differences between thought forms, egregores, and servitors, how to avoid accidentally creating thought forms that work against you, breaking looping patterns of thought, and how your thoughts produce your results, a ritual to call upon your ancestors for assistance, how to do the sign of the Emperor and the sign of silence, how to properly plan your servitors, and a step-by-step guide in creating them. And that's just some of what's included in the program. Thought Forms and Servitors is an MP3 format with a running time of 94 minutes. So if you want to put your magic on autopilot and see constant results, Thought Forms and Servitors is the program for you. You can get Thought Forms and Servitors and other Mind and Magic programs over at mindandmagic.com today. And the last one here. Yikes, Frater. Not surprising. I'll stick to your magic content. Well, that's probably a good idea. You should do that. You wouldn't want me to end up changing your beliefs, which will lead you to be successful now, would you? And that'll be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like. Share it if you did. It does help the channel. Follow me on social media. Links to follow. And I will see you next time. Take care. just to show people how, in fact, they don't make any, it doesn't matter if they didn't, and this is the middle class, they wouldn't up and stuff. That doesn't mean that all the change is going to